Speculation is high that North Korea's third attempt to launch a spy satellite is imminent, possibly just in time for the regime's party founding anniversary today. For more, we're joined by Stephen Noerper this morning. Welcome back.
Welcome. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here.
Is a launch to mark today's anniversary likely? When could it actually take place?
Well, it would be most likely between now, a significant date, as you indicate, as well as up to maybe November. So the next few weeks will be critical, could come in coming days, but we'll keep all eyes on. It seems that a third launch, though, would be one that would entail a bit of a gamble for Kim Jong-un. They would only do that, I think, if the technology had smoothed itself out. In essence, the failed launches this year, and there have been 2 failed launches, were a blow to the regime. So a third one would only come, I think, in the event that they were fairly well assured of its success. But even with failed tests, we see that people learn quite a good deal. And so we need to be very careful about this because it does lead to enhancements in terms of thrust capacity and other things that can figure into long-range missile considerations.
Right. Speaking of those 2 failures, the first attempt took place back in May, but it failed due to issues with the engine and fuel system, and the second one also failed because of the malfunction in the rocket's 3rd stage. Now, what kind of aid in terms of technology do you think Russia has maybe already provided the North?
Well, that's hard to say with any exactitude. The idea that Russia could be providing technology is one that people have been very concerned about relative to the Kim-Putin summit that took place last month. However, the Russians may be reticent to exchange too much of that type of information. There may be a little bit that has leaned forward, but the North Koreans have seemed to want to put forward their homegrown technology. The parts that were salvaged by the ROK military and intelligence services have indicated fairly rudimentary device when it comes to the satellite. So there would have to be fairly large sharing for there to be any significant increase in the technological capabilities. But it may be more of a political statement than a technological statement, meaning that Kim Jong-un may want to do this to draw attention of the public relative to the Founders' Day and as a legitimization aspect for the regime.
Right. Actually, over the weekend, according to Beyond Apparel, that is a U.S. think tank, recent satellite photos show a sharp increase in the rail traffic along the North Korea-Russian border, which is indicating the regime is supplying munitions to Russia. Now, what's your take on this? What kind of weapons could they be?
Well, the biggest concern right now is about munitions and arms. And so if that is taking place, it would probably be munitions and small arms destined for Ukraine, which would complicate the issues tremendously there. We don't know for certain, though, because they're using tarps, according to that report, to cover it. There may be decoy aspects to it. And similarly, there is also the return trips, meaning that North Korea badly needs energy and foodstuffs, and that may be loaded in return on the trains back into North Korea. But if the transfers do in fact take place, and the South Korean government has maintained that we have already seen munitions on the field in Ukraine that are of DPRK origin, that complicates the issue because it means this interstate conflict, the result of Russian aggression on Ukraine, is taking on more of a regional and global dynamic, and that can be very dangerous. As we have seen with Israel and Hamas, things can spiral out of control quickly, and we don't need that aspect of DPRK involvement in the already complicated Russian aggression against Ukraine.
Right, and it's not just South Korea. The U.S. is also keeping close tabs on the Pyongyang-Moscow movement. If what the trains are carrying are weapons for Russia for its use in the crisis against Ukraine, that will for sure be in violation of UN Security Council resolutions. Then what kind of cards will Washington pull out this time?
Well, absolutely, it would go before the UN Security Council, and the U.S. will call for a resolution. The reality now is that Russia, and likely China with it, would veto any resolution by the Security Council. So the U.S. will also go beyond the United Nations system to include things like the G7, potentially the G20, the arrangement that the United States has with Japan India, and Australia. So we'll see an extension into other kinds of dynamics. And in that regard, the improvements in the U.S., Japan, Korea trilateral will come into play. So the U.S. will move on several fronts if indeed that's the case. There will also be the debate in South Korea about introducing more lethal munitions into the war in Ukraine. So it's a very complicated issue that has some very dire potential circumstances.
Definitely.
And the United States will take that seriously as it goes forward to try to counter that. But we'll do that in unison with South Korea, Japan, and other members of the international community.
For sure. Now, before I let you go, over the weekend, South Korea's unification ministry also issued a statement urging North Korea to immediately send a South Korean pastor and 5 other nationals back home. Now, it's been 10 years as far as I know. Why is it taking so long to have them returned? Because it didn't take years to retrieve the U.S. soldier Travis King recently.
Right, and Seoul may see some opportunity in the King release, and it would behoove the DPRK government to move on that front as it did with King. But the fact of the matter is it has been a long period. This does mark the 10th anniversary, and it shows that the Yoon administration will be elevating human rights as concerns. And of course, in terms of the deep impact it must have on the families involved, getting South Korean foreign nationals back home is of great importance. We're also coming close to the 10th anniversary of the United Nations Commission of Inquiry report, which was the big human rights report done 10 years ago. And so we're at a point where focus will be enhanced on DPRK human rights violations and international concerns in that regard.
Definitely. It could be a chance for South Korea to really speak up and have those Korean nationals return home safely. All right. Thanks, as always, for your insight. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.